Welcome back. Today we are in the garage again working on my daily driver. It is a 2010 Subaru Impreza non-turbo. This morning I was actually on my way to work and unfortunately taking some bumpy back roads. My exhaust right about under the driver's seat broke in half. So I live in Minnesota. Many of you live in northern states. In Minnesota, as soon as the snow flies, so does the salt. So anything underneath your car, unfortunately, starts to rust, one being the exhaust. So a few years ago, I did a little bit of work on the exhaust because my resonator was rusting apart and it actually fell down off the car. It's about the same spot where I attached the newer pipe to the old pipe. It rusted there again and it's unfortunately falling apart. So today I'm going to be replacing that and putting actually a new resonator down into the exhaust so it's not quite so drony, but I'll show you a real quick clip of what it sounds like right now. It's basically straight pipe. It's not very good. So as you can see there, not very pleasant, very loud, very obnoxious. We're gonna fix that today. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to my channel. Help me reach 1,000 subscribers. We're coming up in a year and I'd love to hit that 1,000. So we will be cutting out approximately 2 feet of the old exhaust that's attached to the newer pieces of the exhaust. A little bit confusing, but one of the pieces that we will be replacing is like the flex joint that's underneath. It is a flange to a flange with like a swivel piece in it with springs on the bolts. We're going to be replacing that with just a normal steel flex pipe. This is only a 2-inch. Doesn't need to be very much because there are plenty of rubber hangers and stuff for movement underneath the car. I also picked up a 2 1/4 to 2-inch reducer. The exhaust under the car is a 2-inch along with the flex pipe piece. So that's where that's going to be. But then the glass pack that I bought as my resonator is 2 1/4. So that is where the reducer comes into play. I may just make a couple of slits on this, open it up to go around or inside of the reducer piece. We'll see. I don't know how I feel about doing that yet. We'll make that decision when we actually get to putting it into the car. It's all painted with exhaust paint, so hopefully it won't rust too bad underneath the car and it'll make it quite a few more years. I'm just gonna get the car jacked up in the air, get it on stands, and then start prepping the welder a little bit so I can get to tacking this stuff together, marking it out under the car, and getting the old pipe out of there. All right, we'll move on to the next step. Got the welder prepped here. Gas is all hooked it back up to it. The wire's in it, wire ran through the lead. I also did a little bit of prep on the flex pipe so it welds nice and clean. Just ground off some of that galvanizing on the outside layer and the paint off of both ends of the glass pack. Instead of putting in the reducer, this flex pipe will actually kind of sit right inside the end of this. So I'll just kind of hammer that so it's nice and snug and straight, and then I can just weld around that. It's kind of a little bit of a lap joint, not real crazy or anything. That'll help take some of the length out because I don't have to cut that much out of the pipe down there. Just a little bit to get some of the nasty corroded rust off of that flange area. So we're gonna lift the car up and then tackle that old exhaust pipe next. Okay, the car is now up in the air. I got the jack basically maxed out. We're at about 20 or 21-inch lift, square all the way around. When you do exhaust work, you want the car to be nice and level, so your exhaust is basically hanging the same way as it would if your car is on the ground. So we're gonna crawl under there, take the muffler right here, bring that down, and kind of mock it up a little bit, make a couple marks where I need to trim and cut the exhaust out, and then we'll go ahead and cut that out. Pulled my light under here as well so you can kind of get a better idea of where the exhaust actually broke out. And we are going to be cutting out about like right here past where this rusty portion is, just to get to some cleaner galvanized material, grind that off, and put this new muffler in about there. And we will be cutting off this old kind of flex joint flange deal, because that is all crusty and nasty, and cut it off somewhere up in here. So about like a 2-foot chunk here is gonna get cut out, and muffler or resonator put back in. So I just have this kind of propped up with my legs. We will cut it out about right there. So I have a yellow paint marker there and up in the front. That's where we're gonna cut it out. I don't want to go too far forward here because it kind of like arches up slightly. I want to keep it a little bit lower, and I didn't trim it. I'm not going to trim it flush with the length because this tube is a little bit smaller diameter than this, so I can actually slip it in just a little bit for a little bit better seal, hopefully. So yeah, we're gonna kind of pry this down a little bit so I can get the grinder all the way up and over and cut that off. And then I might have to loosen up the hanger up here so I can have this droop down to cut that all the way off. My like jigsaw or like sawzall deal is in my other garage, and my wife has the keys at work, so I can maybe wait a few hours till she's back, or I can attempt to do it now how it sits. So I'm just gonna try and do it with what I have available right now. Well, there it is. So that's about the 2-foot chunk with the flex joint deal that's all corroded and nasty. Like that thing is, that's terrible. So I just cut that off up here, cut it off back here. This is where it was rusted and completely like tore out. That's really bad. I think that's the old pipe maybe. And then where I tried to tack it together this morning before I left work. So really bad, no good. All right, now what I'm gonna do is just get this flex pipe burned onto the cherry bomb real quick. And then I already kind of sized it up in there. It should work pretty well. Gonna be a little bit tight with the angle and the diameter of the actual glass pack itself on the shield, but it should be fine. I don't know how much it focuses here, but not super great because it's welded on some paint that's on the inside of the tube, but also it's not real bad for some exhaust repair. So this is kind of awkward to do this. I'm holding the back up with my knee. The front is at least hung in the hanger. So I'm gonna get this tacked in the front first and then position the back side here. Oh no, I didn't turn on the welder. Just one tack so I can still kind of move it if I have to. Make sure we clear the shield in here. I don't want it to rattle all over. We'll tack this one more time. It was moving quite a lot more than I wanted it to. Maybe let's go with that. It's gonna be quite the gap to fill, but I have some filler material. Let's tack it real quick. Alright. We got about a ½ an inch up and around the shield, so that should be pretty good for movement. The hanger is tight up there and back there. We'll go check the exhaust tip and then probably be able to burn this. Alright, so it looks pretty good in the back. I got it pushed a little bit to one side just so it can clear the diff in the back a little bit. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and start burning this together and call it a day pretty soon. I do have a pretty big gap up there to fill, so I'm just gonna kind of tack weld that together. I didn't really see that from the other side. It's not that bad on the other side, but yeah, we'll get that closed up. We got, it's hard to see, one side welded and the other side of that welded. It's pretty thin material for flex core, and there's a gap here, so I'm just like tack welding the whole way around. Same on the front, really big gap on the top, and I'm just tack welding it down but it's coming along. The exhaust is in, flex pipe's up there, it's welded all the way around, and the cherry bomb at the back is welded all the way around right back in here. I checked, took pictures on top to make sure the holes were all plugged so there is not any gaps or holes and openings on the top side. So now before we drop it down, I am just going to rotate the tires that are up in the air. It's available. All four corners are off the ground, so I'll just rotate these real quick. Then we'll clean up a little bit and do a little sound clip. All right, we got the Subaru back on the ground. Now I'll get you guys a sound clip. But do keep in mind, this is a glass pack with a cheap like Amazon muffler in the back. So if you're trying to do something like this for yourself, this is a very cheap and like non-expensive way of doing this because this has a lot of miles on it and I'm not trying to spend a ton of money on it. Well, I would say that sounds a lot better than it did. Now it's not quite as ridiculous. So that's gonna do it for today. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. Help me get to 1,000 before the end of the year. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.